I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to design a life you're going to love, and then I think we'll have some time for question and answers. I think this is all about designing a life that you're going to love. It's something I'm pretty passionate about, because I think as doctors we work for so many years to get to where we are and to do what we think we're going to love. Then we get to the job and we do love aspects of the job, but then sometimes there are things about it that aren't quite right, and things can build up and just cause us to start to doubt ourselves and think, actually, what am I doing here? But I do think it's possible to make changes that are needed. So just in case people that don't know me, so I'm a GP. I now mainly work in the wellbeing and training space. I'm taught at Cambridge University for several years, where I set up and led their professionalism course. I'm a presenter for the Read Well, Lead, Manage, Thrive course. I'm also a tutor at the Cambridge University Postgraduate Certificate in Medical Education. If anyone's interested, it's a very good one. And I now retrained as an executive coach, and I specialise, like I said, in resilience and wellbeing. I also created the Shapes Toolkit, which is a very sort of simple training course to help professionals, deal with all the stuff that they've got to deal with. And what it doesn't say on there is I'm host of the You Are Not a Frog podcast. So I don't know if anyone's heard that, but do look it up. I was talking to basically lots of other people in the same boat, all about the hacks you can make so that you don't have to burn out or get out in order to have a good life. So that's me. So just welcome here if you do feel a little bit overwhelmed by some of the demands expected of you, and sometimes it seems like you're taking all your strength and mental energy to survive the day job, and maybe one crisis away from not coping. And, I don't know about a lot of people, but I've heard this from a lot of people, particularly during the coronavirus crisis or before. They just wish they could enjoy going to work like they used to. But we know that there's a better option than either getting out or burning out. Okay, there are more options. And my hope for you guys is that a little bit of what I say, and through engaging with the GP Pause programme and all the stuff that the GP Task Force are doing, you're going to feel calmer, make better decisions, and basically feel happy in your work and life. And this quote, when I looked at it, really hit me. It's I think quote from Maya Angelou. So you will be remembered by what brought you the most joy. And for me, that's really important, because sometimes I, was just working in a job that I didn't find particularly joyful, and saving those pockets of joy for maybe things at the weekend. And it just got me thinking that actually it's important to be happy at work and to find joy in your workplace as well. And so I started looking into actually how do you do that? So I'm going to talk just for about half an hour about why we're increasingly suffering stress and burnout. I think you could probably all know anyway. And why we need to work happier, not harder, and how to make good choices in order to get more joy into your lives at work and work happier. Now, the problem is, even before the coronavirus pandemic, doctors were not stressed. We were on the edge of burnout. A lot of us, nearly 60%, reported the job is very or extremely stressful. And this is an astounding statistic. 94% of GPs were suffering from mild or severe exhaustion, and something like 93.5% of GPs could be classed as having a moderate or severe mental health problem, I think, because of the stress. And this was all in 2019. And I've created a few courses and online courses about how doctors can beat stress. And I was interviewing a load of GPs about that before the course. And this is one of the quotes I got from someone. And it really does describe some of the days that I used to feel I was having in some of the places that I worked. And I think if you can recognise yourself in that quote, just put a yes in the chat for me. I'd like to know if I'm the only one feeling like that sometimes, or if the other people feel like that as well. And so by the end of the day, I would come home and just have nothing left to give my family, nothing left to give my kids, and just feel like, actually, is this the only way that this is going to work? I'm not so, we've got someone saying yes, thank you. Not just me feeling like that, a couple of people feeling like that. And the problem is, folks, this isn't just about something that's nice to have. It's not just about wanting to be happy and have a nice life for yourself. It's about your patients, it's about your families, because if you are nearing burnout, you have a much higher chance of having of making a mistake, basically. And there's very good reasons for that, because of the stress hormones on your brain and the fact our performance really dips under increasing pressure. So I don't think it's right that doctors should be feeling like this. I don't think it's right that doctors shouldn't be able to look after themselves in the same way that they'd want to look after their patients. And it's not right that you're not able to take your own advice. But lots of us feel guilty for looking after ourselves, or feel guilty for wanting to have a job and a career in which we're going to thrive. And because we maybe look around at our colleagues and think, well, they're all putting up with it, then maybe I should. But, you know, I think that the main thing that people have told me, they feel like it's like a hamster on a wheel, that they're working as hard as they can in order just to go back and do it the next day. And so as a consequence, because of this, what's happening is that lots and lots of GPs are leaving. And I know that all these task force things have been set up around the country to try and keep people in their jobs. And there was a study in the BJGP in 2016, and they looked at the reasons why GPs under the age of 50 were leaving the NHS. And the overwhelming reason that they were leaving was because of the effect of their job on their well-being. And interestingly, that paper compared GPs to frogs in boiling water. And they said that, you know, the workload in general practice then crept up slowly. And just like a frog, if you put a frog into a pan of boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put it in a pan and you heat the water up really slowly, then it won't notice and it'll stay there till it's boiled alive. And so this paper was comparing GPs to frogs, you know, not noticing this and slowly getting boiled alive. I don't think that was particularly helpful, because the good news is that you're not a frog. Okay, there are other choices that you've got. There are other things that you can do. And I like that concept so much that that's what my podcast is called. It's You're Not a Frog. You have more options than just to get out, jump out the pan, or to burn out. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. Because like I've just said, if the pressure is too high, your performance will start to go down. And many of you will have seen the Yerkes-Dodson curve, but I think many which basically shows what happens to your performance under increasing pressure. But many GPs are finding that as the stress increases, they're now starting to be on the edge of that curve when their performance is starting to dip, or they might even be becoming ill. So the problem is, I think that we have just been conditioned to work harder and harder when the workload builds up, haven't we? I mean, I remember as a junior doctor, probably, I don't think any of you are as old as me, you know, I was doing the 120-hour working weeks, and that was just, you just had to suck it up. And when people gave you more patients, you just got on and you just worked harder and faster. Unfortunately, that's not that productive. Well, fortunately, actually, it's not that productive. It's not actually the way we were designed. And I think we still are in the mindset that if I work harder and harder, then I will be successful and then I will be happy. But here's the good news. All the evidence shows that this doesn't work, and actually this is the formula that works. If I'm happy, I will be productive and then I will be successful. Right, which is good news, which it then means that pursuing happiness in our work is really important. And, you know, when I say happiness, I know some people are slightly allergic to that word. I'm not talking about just pursuing positive emotions and peak experiences and things like that. I'm talking about happiness which is to do with meaning and satisfaction and purpose, and the feeling that you're doing a job well done, and sort of deep joy. And this guy called Tal Ben-Shahar, he teaches the most popular course ever actually at Harvard University. I've got his book here actually called Happier. He says that we should be measuring everything we do in how much happiness it's going to bring us, not how much money it's going to bring us. Okay, because actually happiness, not gold or prestige, is the ultimate currency. And actually, if you look at people who have above average salaries, which is everybody here, then actually, and you compare them to people with sort of average or below salaries, we spend more time at work doing things that we don't like and are generally more miserable and more anxious. Okay, so that's not good news. So let's have a think about how we can actually work happier as opposed to work harder. And I think firstly, we need to look at some of the happiness traps that we need to avoid if we aren't going to sort of just keep going and doing what we've always done. So firstly, I think there's this trap of I should or I ought to. And I'm sort of looking at the demographics of lots of people that are here. I think we've got lots of maybe people with small children who there's, you know, goes with the guilt. Anyone find mother guilt. If you got a little bit of mother guilt, put a little mother guilt. Just write mother guilt in the chat, because I certainly know what mother guilt feels like. And sometimes, you're slightly feeling that I'm not doing a good enough job at work, and I'm not doing a good enough job at home, and I cannot please everybody all the time. And I did read in a book recently that, as parents, we are expected to work as if we don't have a family, and then look after our families as if we don't work. And that is an impossible task. So yes, and sorry, I'm being very sexist there. We've got some father guilt as well. Thank you, Andy. Oh, and I'm pleased to see Andy says he's a bit older as well. Someone's got teenagers, but you know what? I've got more guilt than I've got teenagers. They're so good at guilting you out, I tell you. Oh my word. They know how to, little kids are very, pulling on your time and your energy, but teenagers, they know where your buttons are and they know what to press. Anyway, so we need to avoid this I should or I ought to, because a lot of the time, the pressure we're putting on ourselves is purely internal. It's us putting our own pressure on ourselves, looking around going, well, I ought to do that and I should do that. And actually, it's not anyone else that's asking us to do it. It's ourselves. The second happiness trap I've already alluded to, money is everything. And actually, we know that it's not. We know that, you need a certain amount of income to be secure and to be able to feed your family. But, above a certain amount, all that happens is you buy more expensive holidays and faster cars and you have more stuff. Actually, it's not everything. And every time you book that extra shift or you take on that extra piece of work, you need to think about, will that make me happy? What am I giving up to get that extra bit of money? Am I giving up time with my family or a meal with my friends or something? So money is not everything. Here's another thing. Work is supposed to be a chore. It's supposed to be hard. I remember when I was a house officer, I found it really tough, and I didn't enjoy my foundation years at all. Well, in those days, I was called a JHO. And my husband had just got a sort of job at a consulting firm. He loved what he was doing. He absolutely skipped into work, had a ball, had a really great time. And I remember thinking, really, is it ever possible to really enjoy your job and not just try and get through the day? And I've discovered, yes, it is possible to do that, okay? Work isn't supposed to be a chore. We're at work for so long, it needs to be something that we look forward to and we enjoy. Otherwise, what are we doing? What are we doing with our lives? And of course, occasionally work is difficult, but it shouldn't be the bulk of the time. And leads me on to the next point, that stress is normal. Now, I was talking to a physiotherapist who said that she had a client who was a runner. And this runner had injured his knee and came in to see her and said, oh, here I am again, but I'm a runner. Being injured is just normal, isn't it, for runners? And she said, no, it's not. Being injured is not normal. You've got to be more careful, and we need to do something about this. I think as doctors, we feel that stress is normal. We feel that actually everybody's stressed. I don't know a doctor who's not stressed, therefore it's normal. And we should just suck it up. Stress is not normal. It is not a normal physiological state. And it brings with it all sorts of not only mental health problems, but physical problems. Quite literally, you will die earlier if you spend your whole life stressed. Okay, the circulating cortisol will give you high blood pressure. It will harden your arteries. You'll be more prone to cancer. All those sorts of things. So stress is not normal and it doesn't make us feel very good. So we need to get that out of our heads to start off with. So what's the solution for some of this? Well, some of you will have read the report that came out from the GMC in 2019 where they looked at the wellbeing of doctors. It was called Caring for Doctors, Caring for Patients by Professor Michael West, who's this fantastic guy who's done so much research into teams, particularly in high-stress jobs in the NHS, and a lady called Dame Denise Coyer. And their report, well, I think it was a pretty obvious report. It was basically listing all the things that interrupted doctors' well-being. And I think probably if you asked anybody here, you'd be able to tell them exactly the same. But it was really good because it had a lot of evidence behind it. And they said that actually you need to come up, you need to address 3 issues. And they actually used A, B, C. So autonomy is really important. So being in control. B was for belonging, okay. And you need to belong to a community and feel that you have a home and feel that you have a safe space and you get on with your peers. And you need competence, okay? You need not just the intellectual competence, but when they talk about competence, you need to be trained properly. You need the resources and you need the skills to do the job. And that's will increase your well-being at work. Now, um, Daniel, what's his name? I've gone blank. There's another book Daniel Pink, in a book called Drive, talks about the importance of mastery, autonomy and purpose in terms of motivation. So they're all very, very similar things. And so, you need the skills, you need the people around you, and you need the control. And I think this thing about control is really, really important. Here's another quote from one of the GPs I was interviewing. I don't want to stop being a GP. I just want more control back. I feel like I've got all the responsibility and none of the control. And I think the great thing about GP Pause Programme, it gives you that bit more control over what's happening to you, about the breaks that you want to take, about how you can get back in. So there's an awful lot of stuff that you can then take control of, because I always think that life is a lot easier if you stay in your own zone of power. And the zone of power is all about working out what you're in control of and what you're not in control of. So there's plenty of things I'm not in control of at the moment. The coronavirus pandemic, the government, what my husband does, what my kids do. I have no control over that. I only have control over what I do, when I choose to work, what I choose to say, how I choose to respond, all those sorts of things. And if I focus on the things I can't control, I'm going to get incredibly stressed. But if I stay in my zone of power, that involves choosing where I work, choosing what I ask for. I can't choose what other people then choose to give me, but I can choose what I ask for and how I approach that. I can choose how often I work and how many hours I decide to do. All those things. Then I will be much, much more powerful and much more productive. So there are lots of different things that we can control. And when we look at the Shapes Toolkit course, we look at that zone of power and how we can stay in our own control. Well, firstly, we can take control of our own well-being. And here's a quote from that report. Medicine is a tough job. We make it far harder than it should be by neglecting the simple basics in caring for doctors' well-being. So there's a lot of stuff that workplaces do badly, quite frankly, to look after their doctors, okay, which they could do better. But there's a lot of stuff that we do badly to look after ourselves as well. All the times that we say, well, I can't possibly do that because I'm too tired, or I haven't got time, or I'm not going to plan in connecting with my friends, or I'm not going to plan in that bit of exercise. And then we self-soothe with things like chocolate and alcohol, which means that we stay on the couch even more. And then we binge Netflix because we're just too tired to do anything else. And it becomes this sort of perpetuating circle and this self-fulfilling prophecy. So we really do need to put I know this is a bit of a cliche, but it's the best one I can come up with. We need to put our own oxygen mask on first. Because if you're not looking after yourself, then how are you going to look after your patients? How are you going to look after your families? Okay. And I think this is something that we just haven't grasped. If you were a professional footballer, you will have targets. I remember taking my son to a cricket training session, and the footballers from Cambridge United also use this pavilion to train in. And on the wall, they literally had lists of what their percentage hydration had been throughout the last month, every single one of them with a percentage there, and the percentage body fat, and how long they'd exercised. And there was this chart up on the wall. And would we say to a professional footballer, you know what, love, it's fine. Don't look after yourself. It's okay for you not to train or stay physically fit. Of course not. Of course we'd never say that to them, because their job is to keep themselves fit, right? And to act to be at the top of their game. Right? Your job is to use your brain to problem solve, to be compassionate, to be kind, to endure quite long days. Therefore, if you are not physically fit, if you're not mentally fit in the top of your game, you will be failing people. So and no one is going to look after you apart from yourself. So it's really important that you do that. And I'm not going to lecture you about all the well-being factors, but we've got lots of podcasts about all the different well-being factors, which include sleeping and eating well and exercising. But it's not just the physical stuff. It's about noticing and being grateful. It's about giving and learning and playing and connecting with people. So all those things really, really important. So as well as taking control of our own well-being, we also need to take control of our time, okay? And the biggest barrier actually to taking control of our well-being is time. Because when you say to GPs, why can't you do the X, Y, Z or look after yourself or do exercise, the response is always, I'm too tired, I'm overwhelmed, and I just don't have enough time. And interestingly, whenever I used to whenever I started my courses, I'd start talking about wellbeing first. Actually, I now address time first and prioritization first, because I think unless people have got that straight, it's very hard to get onto the wellbeing. And I'm sure you can probably recognise this. I sit here in consultations thinking, I can't get my head around the pressure and the expectations that are unrealistic. And there are things that we can do to help. But, and this is a big but, I do a lot of coaching. So I was coaching a GP and she said to me, I need to work on my time management. So I said, okay, so tell me what's been going on. And she talked about her on-call day and how she found it very difficult and how she was always running behind. And it turns out that she would see about 15 or 16 patients in a surgery when she was on call, just routine patients, and they would give her 3 catch-up slots for 20 phone calls that she had to deal with as the on-call doctor, right? So anyone could see that the problem wasn't that she wasn't managing her time properly. The problem was she had too much to do, literally wouldn't fit into that time. And I think that's the main problem for GPs. Is not that you're really not managing your time, you've actually just got too much to do in the time available, right? So there are some hacks like delegating and automating as much stuff. But and you can batch tasks and do all of the one task at the same time and minimize interruptions by turning off your email and just focusing on one thing at once and doing your best work at your best time. So when you're fresh, if you've got a big project you need to focus on and all that sort of thing. But actually, to take control of your time, you're going to have to say no to some things. You're going to have to eliminate a few things, and you're going to have to try and leave some sort of a buffer zone so you're not always racing, so you're giving yourself time, so you're not feeling you're constantly hurrying and you're constantly rushing. So how do we eliminate things? Well, this is a really good book, and Elise will know I recommend this book all the time. Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and I read it every year because I think it's really helpful. And the strapline is basically do fewer things but better. All right, and he talks about these 3 truths of essentialism. So number 1 is I choose to. Okay, do what you have chosen to do. And I think the COVID pandemic has taught us, that there are only a few things that really matter. And I can do anything, but I can't do everything. You guys are very, very talented individuals. You can do everything. Sorry, anything. You can do anything. You can learn how to do anything, but you can't do everything. We all have the same amount of time in the day. And I remember coaching another chap who was actually doing one of my online courses, and he said to me, I just want to get a day off, and I can't see why I can't get a day off in my week. So I said, okay, let's map out your week, shall we? So we mapped out his week, and he was a 3-day-a-week partner, and he also had a sort of clinical assistant job somewhere else. He was also doing some ad hoc work for the CCG that worked out about half a session a week. And he was an appraiser and something else as well. And actually, when we mapped out his week, I sort of said to him, well, what do you notice? And he looked at it and he went, because actually he was committed when he actually worked out not just how much work he was contracted for, but the extra work, because with the best one in the world, if you're doing 6 sessions in general practice, you're going to have an extra session of paperwork, aren't you? When we actually put that into the week, he's like, okay, I can now see why I can't have a day off. I haven't got time. And so many of us try and fit in these extra roles off the side of the desk and just squeeze them into our week without actually giving enough time. So can I suggest that you do this exercise, and at the end I'll give you a link so you can sign up and get some resources and a chart in order to do this. Work out what your week looks like currently. Right, how many regular clinical sessions do you do? Be honest about how long each of those sessions takes. So I was coaching another lady who was saying to me, she again was doing 6 sessions as a salaried doctor. And she would find she finished on a Thursday evening, and then she would find that she was having to log in and do paperwork at the weekend, which she really hated and she really resented. So we did this exercise, and I said, realistically, how much paperwork has she got? She said, well, I have to get back on a Thursday evening because my husband goes out, so I can't finish it off. So realistically, I do have another 2 hours of paperwork and admin after I finish on a Thursday that I have to do before Monday. And again, what was she in control of? Well, she probably wasn't in control of how much work she had, although if she'd have chosen to drop a session, the work would have gone down. So that was something she potentially was in control of. But there are consequences of dropping that session, of course, but all these things are choices. But she decided actually she was going to do that admin and paperwork, but she was going to do it at a time that she wanted to and be really intentional about it. So she set herself a 2-hour slot on a Friday morning where she was going to get up, get herself a really nice coffee and a cake, do that admin, and then go for lunch with a friend and go to the gym. So she'd taken control, and by just putting that into her week, she wasn't then having to dial in on a Saturday and ruining her weekend with the paperwork. So you need to be honest about how much work you've actually got and make time for it. Otherwise, it's incredibly stressful. And think about actually, when are you taking time off to rest, and what else are you doing in the week? And so what I get people to do is literally plot out when they're working and what they're doing in all these different sessions. And let me tell you, it's quite an eye-opener. Once you've done that and worked out what you're actually doing, I then want you to take the next piece of paper, which is on the toolkit, and write down what you'd like your week to look like. Okay, what would a week look like for you in which you could really thrive? And include all those things that are important for your well-being, like that running club or the netball club, or going to the pub with your mates or something like that, or playing tennis or going for a walk with your family. Because no one else is going to plan your life apart from you. And if you don't take control of it, then bet your bottom dollar somebody else is going to. And you know what? We do make time for the stuff we feel is really important in our lives. So it's something just to think about there. Take control of your stress. So I think, there's lots of things that happen. And when we do the shapes toolkit, we go into this a little bit more. But actually, when it comes to stress and overwhelm, as Captain Jack Sparrow says, the problem's not the problem is your attitude about the problem. And as Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So whether we feel stressed or overwhelmed by a situation depends entirely on how we are responding and thinking about that situation and the stories we're telling ourselves in our heads. So if we're saying to ourselves, I'm never going to get through this work, or I'm a dreadful doctor for running this late, no one else will be working like this, all that sort of stuff, then we will be responding badly. If we take some time and space to really think about things and think through how we can change those stories, we're going to be a lot less stressed. And if we take some time in our life to then plan and work out how we're going to stop those trigger events from happening, it's going to help. And you do need to get help with this sort of stuff. I've had coaching myself. I know lots of doctors have had coaching, they've had counselling, they've had therapy. And, if you need some help, go and get it. I'm constantly reading self-help books and lots of things like that. Another really good book is called The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris, which is all about acceptance and commitment therapy. So get the help you need, listen to stuff, listen to podcasts, do courses, access your help from your GP if you are feeling stressed, and access all these wonderful resources that the GP Task Force have got. Get some coaching. They're often free coaching around, and I'm not quite sure why in medicine we still feel that we need to be struggling to get some coaching. Actually, if you were the CEO of a company, you would have a coach. If you were a professional tennis player, you would have a coach, and it's exactly the same. So, get the help you need. And if you can't find a coach or anything, go for a drink with a friend and talk to each other and coach each other and just listen and support each other. So finally, bring it into land. And if people have got questions, then then do pop them in the chat and then we can answer them in a minute. So, take control of your work life. So make some good choices, right? Choose what you want to do. Choose where you want to work. And one of the key points in my life was when I went to an appraisal, and I was really at a low point in my career, not enjoying my work. And I said to my appraiser, I just think I'm in the wrong career. And she looked at me, she said, no, you're in the wrong practice. And I handed my notice in that evening and went to work in another practice, which I loved. Okay, so you can move it around, not everything will suit everybody. Find the practice that suits you, find the workplace that suits you, and it's okay. It's okay to say this one doesn't suit me and that one does, because that one will suit somebody else. So make some good choices. Plan your working week, like I've just said, in the Thrive Week Planner. And we need friends at work. Make sure you are connecting with people. And I think when I was talking to Elise about this session, she was talking to me about the importance of having like a home in primary care where you feel that you belong. And I think that is really important, a practice where you feel knows you, that have got your back, that you can just phone them up and go, you know, what do you think about this? Where you can have some mentorship, where you've just got friends. It's really important. And I heard a statistic, I'm not sure this is true, but you know, it's pretty astounding that if you have a good friend at work, you add 7 years to your life expectancy. So really important. We all need to be able to debrief and get out of our own echo chambers and just check things through with people. So remember to have friends at work. And we also need to play to our strengths. And this is where I'm getting more into the sort of career coaching stuff here. Because a lot of us spend a lot of time identifying our weaknesses and working out how we can change and working out how we can improve ourselves, okay? And we focus on, you know, oh, I'm really not very good at audit, so let's work out how I can do my audit course, or I'm not very good at this. Now, there's nothing wrong with working on your weaknesses. That's fine. And some of us need to do that because they're really interfering with our performance. But you get much bigger return by working on your strengths and developing your strengths. And I just wonder how many of you actually know what your strengths are, because I didn't until I had some coaching and did a Strengths Finder course and thought, oh, one of my top strengths is communicating ideas to people. Gosh, I didn't realise that. One of my top strengths was not writing detailed documents and stuff like that, and I'd always struggled with that. Now, I decided to develop my strengths, and not only do you get much quicker results if you're working on your strengths rather than working on your weaknesses, but you enjoy things much better. You enjoy what you're doing and you end up doing what you love. So I realised that I enjoyed teaching. So I then did more teaching, and then I was loving my job more. So actually doing a strengths survey, and you can get a free one online at a website, I think it's called AuthenticHappiness.com. That's on Martin Seligman. There's the Clifton Strengths Finder, which is very good as well. You do have to pay for that, but I think all these are really helpful. Work out what your strengths are and then do more of that and do more of what you love, because the great thing about general practice is that actually within one job there's a lot of different opportunities to be able to get involved with coaching and mentoring and training and teaching and clinical governance and running things and business, and you know, there's loads of stuff. So if you're in a practice and there's something that you think you might like to get involved with, then be proactive and go and do more of that so you can craft your job within what you're doing. And then just very finally, if you're connecting with what makes life worth living for you, you are going to work happier than work harder. And I'm just going to finish on this quote that I found at the beginning of the first lockdown, actually, which really affected me and I really loved. Because I don't know about you, but when lockdown first happened, it was all very traumatic. But part of me was breathing a secret sigh of relief that that treadmill that we call work and life had stopped, and I suddenly didn't have to take the kids here and there and do this and that and travel everywhere. And Adam Fraser says, what I'm observing currently is that people are fighting for and grieving a life that made them freaking miserable. So during the crisis, don't just pivot, but take time to evolve the way you're living your life in a more meaningful and connected way. So do that for your life at work and at home, because I want you guys to be able to feel calmer, make better decisions and be really successful in your work and in your life. So you're going to need a plan. And that's what's great about GP Pause. I think you have this plan about how you're doing it. You're not going to be successful unless you actually work out what you're going to do. And there are loads of resources out there that are going to be helpful. So I've talked a lot, so I've gone a bit over time, but you know, is there anything out of what I've said that you can do in the next week to help you work happier rather than harder? And I'd like you to write that down for yourself. So you've got a little note about that thing that you're going to do out of everything I've said. And this has been a very, very quick overview, and there's all sorts of extra more stuff. But what can you do in the next week to help you work happier? And if you're happy, do put that in the chat. I'd love to see some actions that you've got. And if you have any questions as well, do put that in the chat as well, and I will, or pop on. It's quite nice. We've got a small group, so you can pop on the video and ask me questions. And there are some resources available to you. The Thrive Week Planner is just a simple tool that you can use to plan your week. There's the You Are Not a Frog podcast. There's loads of stuff around there about thriving at work, and it's done for GPs and doctors and professionals in high stress jobs. If you're interested, I've also got an online course. We've got a special offer on at the moment, which takes you through the Shapes toolkits in much more detail to help you look at your well-being. We look at time management, look at how you change your reaction and response to stress. So you check that out there. And do just get in touch with me if you want to talk further, if you've got any questions, and you can contact me at Twitter or LinkedIn. So that's the end of my sort of prepared stuff, but I'm really happy to take some questions all good. We've got some actions in the chat here. Kathleen's going to practice saying no. Well done. Top tip for saying no: buy yourself some time. So say, can I check my diary and get back to you? First thing, that's good. Elise's going to do a strength finder. Yeah, well done. So yes, Elise, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. I have listened to you a few times, but I always pick up something new. So thank you. Can I just ask you, if you had to recommend one book, with Christmas coming up, that maybe we can ask someone to get us, what book would you recommend?
That's really interesting. Essentialism. I think I'd recommend that. Yeah. I would also recommend, if you want to read a real classic, it's the Stephen Covey book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Ooh, I think that book has had a massive influence on me. Essentialism is the one I read every year, but The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one that made a difference. Now, I've got a question actually, privately in the chat. What were the main differences between the practice you didn't enjoy and the one I did? The practice I didn't enjoy, they didn't value me. They treated me as a number, as someone just bum on seat to see patients, and weren't interested in developing any of my skills, and weren't particularly interested in socialising they didn't have a coffee break. I kept trying to instill a coffee break, get people together. Nope, and after a few years I left. The one I really enjoyed, my training practice was fantastic. They had a coffee break every single day, and it held that practice together, and they were communicating. And then the third one that I really enjoyed as well, I think it's just opportunities to do other things, not just be a bum on a seat seeing patients.
The power of a coffee break.
Yeah, honestly, I've sort of got a mantra that I wouldn't work in a practice that didn't have one. Actually, it's so important. But a lot of people say, oh, we haven't got time. But the evidence about breaks is so strong. If you don't have a break, you're going to be slower anyway. So you might as well go and have a coffee break and connect with your friends and connect with your peers. So yeah. There we are. And Emily's saying, what the strength finder quizzes I recommend. So there's one, I think it's called let me put this in the chat. It's called the VIA. And this is one I was told about on my coaching course. It's called the VIA Strength Survey. And I think I found it by going to AuthenticHappiness.com. And I think that is a free one, but you've got the Gallup. So you've got the Gallup Strengths survey, and you've also got the Clifton Strengths Finder as well. I think so. Strengths Finder. So yeah, I think just Google all of that. Oh, brilliant, Susie! Thank you. As if by magic, it has appeared. And if you're interested, actually, I've got a link as well. That's a link if you want to do more on this. Then do have a look at the online course. It's not for everybody, but you might be interested in that. It just really helps you focus down on what you want to keep doing, what you can say no to, all those sorts of things.